Sims.
Kane Sims, the one and only.
Britain's finest, Mr. Kane Sims.
Dustin Coates.
I like it when you guys are together and talking about voice.
Without further ado,
Welcome to the show.
Right. I think that was smoother than last time.
I think we're getting it down, yeah.
Yeah, that was as smooth as we've done it, that. Nice one. Well,
awesome
hello.
video.
Say again?
It's an awesome video. Like, I liked it, the sound and everything.
It was all right, wasn't it? It was good. We're starting to kind of rejuvenate the podcast from what we used to have when it was purely audio and trying to get it worked into the video. So, hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to VUX World. There's another line I haven't said for a while, Dustin.
Yeah, it's good to be back, good to be in the flow. Looking forward to this conversation. I think this is going to be a good one. We were chatting beforehand. I think that we've already got some questions from the audience and hoping that we'll get a lot more as well.
Indeed. And if you do have any questions, feel free to stick them in the chat. If you are on LinkedIn, it is broadcasting on LinkedIn, so it's actually working, LinkedIn for once. Or if you're on YouTube, wherever you are, feel free to stick the questions in the chat. Today, we're going to talk about the future, or AI and the future of customer service, and not just the impact on customer service as in customers receiving services from you, but also what's the impact on the business, what's the impact on the staff, what's the impact on the structure, what can you do now to prepare for that kind of future, and what's the best way to do it. And I am delighted to be joined obviously by the infamous Dustin Coates, but also by Noam Fine of Vonage. Noam, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here, and you actually pronounced my name right, so that is exciting by itself. Like, I feel like we've done our part, you know?
Yeah. I think I was getting it wrong for a while. I always, I'm not too great with names, but I'm glad to have got that. Glad to have got that right. So, tell us, John. Yes, it will be recorded. It'll be on YouTube and on the podcast on Monday. And Necker Wolf is curious to hear about the future of customer service, which we will get to imminently. But first, Noam, tell us a little bit about yourself. You are, I would say, probably legendary or a legend in the conversational AI space. You had a lot of experience. You've done a hell of a lot of work, founded Over AI, got acquired. Now you're up to some really interesting stuff with Vonage. But I'll throw the stage to you to tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history, a little bit about how you kind of got into this stuff, and then we'll get into what's going on with Vonage and stuff like that.
Sure. So, yes, AI and AI-related technologies, machine learning for a long while, actually, even before it was called that. I think, and even before technology was so hyped. So, me personally, as an entrepreneur for the past, 14, 15, 16, 17 years, a long time now, founded with always with my co-founder, Yossi Marwani. We founded a few companies, and the last one that you've just mentioned, Over AI, got acquired by Vonage. Quick word about Over AI. Over AI was started with the idea of incorporating conversational AI and voice. And even though I think now it's kind of like common we all say voice bots and stuff like that, and we are aware of the technology. When we started it, that was pretty revolutionary. I remember the first time that where we connected these capabilities, conversational capabilities, into voice, and the first voice call that we've made with an actual person, and we were all. It actually started. It's almost like a gag a little bit, because we were usually doing virtual assistants, but more in the consumer space, Alexa and Google Assistant and such. And when we did the first one over a phone call, and we saw the AI virtual assistant talking over the phone with a person, that was pretty exciting by itself, and an eye-opener. And an eye-opener to what this could be and how this could impact the entire industries. And this is kind of like the concept of Over AI started and grew. And Vonage acquired Over AI a year and a half ago. We were very excited to join. We think I can share a few words about Vonage specifically. And why we thought that space and communication space is so exciting. So we were extremely excited to join Vonage with the acquisition. And I'm now heading what's known as Vonage AI, essentially implementing AI-based technologies across Vonage area of services.
Cool, nice. And yeah, so over AI then that was is what is in, and we'll get into the specifics of this, but is what is in Vonage now almost exactly what over AI was? And so over AI it's a conversational AI platform, is that right? And what's been brought into Vonage is that kind of, yeah. Sorry, I think there's a bit of a
this
delay.
Is where it started. So this is where it started at Vonage, but it grew to so much more. The reason, so quick word about Vonage and quick word about communication space and why we were so excited about combining forces. So we were looking at what's happening within communications, and we're also even being specific around contact center, and we're seeing actually more of the stuff and more of the same that has been happening for the past tens of years, I guess. No dramatic change. Well, and this also applies to communication. At the end of the day, you're seeing somebody picking up the phone on one end, somebody holding the phone on the second end, media going from end to end, and that's it. So we moved from analog to digital, voice over IP, and stuff like that. The experience itself, the outcome, and actually even what you're doing with this mechanism remains very much the same. And we thought that this could be and must be interrupted and disrupted. And when we were looking at Vonage and when we started discussing Vonage, we found this company that actually covers the entire space of communication. Vonage has solutions in the UCaaS space. Vonage has solutions in the CC space and has solutions around API and CPaaS. So we thought and with that, Vonage becomes very, very much unique in the space, actually covering end-to-end everything that you can think around business communication. So we thought this could be the perfect partner to go out and disrupt the market. So we did start with implementing conversational AI technologies for Vonage customers and some of its services, and it grew to a concept that is much, much, much bigger today than what it used to be, and that's what we call intelligent communication. When we're thinking about intelligent communication, for us, this is the future of communication in general. This is about actually utilizing and looking at communication as data first, because this is what we do when you come from artificial intelligence and machine learning. Everything that you build, actually you build on top of data. So when we're looking at Vonage as a digital communication, digital transformation company and provider, so we are looking at it as this ocean of data that is out there, and nobody is actually capitalizing on our customers or past customer that it's all data that is available for them. So now when that within the pipes, within these communication pipes, be it voice, messaging, video, you have underlying data, and when you have data, you can actually build amazing stuff on top of it. You can build advanced analytics that you can provide to your customers, and you can build intelligent applications. One of them being conversational bots, voice and text, but that actually goes much further than that. So this is what we're doing now with this shift to intelligent communication, deploying this for our customers, and our customers today enjoy the fact that they have intelligence built into every part of the services that they're buying from Vonage.
Interesting. What would an example be of that? I've got a couple of questions to dig into some of the things you're saying there, but what's an example, like for people tuning in, what would be like in practice example of that intelligent communication? Like what would a use case example be where that stuff is like threaded together?
So let's try and imagine this voice stream coming up from one end to the other. If in the past, this is what we would just look at it, right, as this stream of media, a little bit like, for me, a little bit like water or electricity or something like that, running very effectively through the pipes. But now we're actually breaking it down, and when we're seeing voice, we can also see the transcription and the actual conversation. And when you see that, you can extract sentiment. You can extract biometrics, extract the topics of the conversations, summary, action items. And when you deliver that to your customers, this media stream is no longer something that happened and is gone, but it actually transforms into knowledge, something that you can grow from. And this is extremely valuable for companies out there, because this actually unlocks value for them into how they transform their business, how they grow, how they can grow their revenues, right? How they get insights from that on how they can improve their daily operation. So something that was just like this interaction, all of a sudden becomes something that is an asset and that you can grow from. And when you think about it, that is amazing. It goes beyond the concept of digital transformation that deals with operational efficiency, but actually goes into the space of how do you grow your business, which has different value, right? Higher one.
Noam, you just mentioned a few examples of things that people can do with this new technology. Can you go a little bit more in detail and talk about perhaps some specific customers and how they've used these capabilities and what the outcomes have been?
Definitely, without naming customers, but when you go to analytics, when you start listening to what's happening as part of these conversations, you know what? Let me give you a different example, something that I think we can all relate better. Let's think about this session that we're having now, right? We all have meetings inside our company, and sometimes with others external. Let's imagine this as a meeting that we're having. In the past, this meeting would be just what it is. Some people would listen in, maybe take notes, maybe not so much. We learned something, it's kept somewhere in our minds, but then basically it's gone. But what if we take this meeting, and if it's being recorded, transcribed, and we extract all these insights, and some of these insights become action items that are sent to you automatically? All of a sudden you can go back to this meeting and search it, maybe, because insert other meetings, right? Because if you wanted to learn about conversational AI, you have a lot of meetings around it across your organizations. What if you could do all that? All of a sudden, this meeting that we have now, right, this video stream, becomes knowledge and becomes something that stays and becomes that asset that I was talking about. And in a similar way, this is happening across different meetings that our customers are having using our services.
I think we can all relate to, and Kane, I'm sure you're thinking maybe the same thing. This technology sounds really exciting, right? This opens up a lot of new worlds and new doors, to mix metaphors here. But one of the things that we're hearing a lot, these people, those of us in the voice, the NLU space, is what is the business impact? So taking to your example of the transcription of the meetings and recording the notes for the long term, that all sounds really interesting. But when it comes down to it, there's got to be a money, right? So you're not offering this for free. There's got to be that ROI. So what kind of ROI, what kind of metrics are your customers seeing when they're integrating Vonage AI?
So I'll get to metrics in a second. Let's talk about contact center space, just to narrow the scope down a little bit. If you go now to most contact center managers, and you ask them what are people calling about, they might have an idea. Some of them, actually a larger percent than what we would want to think, have this idea kind of like out of a hunch, because they kind of like know, they've been told, or something like that. It's not very data driven. Others have the data because they're using some sort of CRM system, and you have agents that at the end of the conversation, they will log it and enter some, the inquiry topic, so they can run a report around it and know why people are calling in for. But at the end of the day, so kind of like a soft metrics, because somebody wrote something, has a lot of room for error, and also it doesn't cover, you have a call with the customers, 5, 10, 15 minutes sometimes, and it doesn't cover the full 15 minutes, right? It just covers a quick word about what just happened. Somebody called about a refund. That's simply not enough. But if you take these conversations, again, store them, transcribe, machine classifies the topics from conversations, extracts the main topics, and maybe cluster certain criteria that weren't there before, automatically finds the right clustering, that surfaces data that wasn't there before. And all of a sudden, the call flows differently, understanding what's happening. And you can also do that in real time because changes happen all the time. And you can be agile enough and not wait for a long period of time until something surfaces, which is too late because it's already very significant within your volume. So this is another example of how that applies in the contact center space. When we're looking at metrics and how we drive ROI, there are a few kind of metrics that we look at. We obviously, with our customers, we want to track NPS. That's always huge. And by the way, quick note about that. Again, when we're looking at contact centers, improving customer service is always key and always the starting point and the benchmark for everything that and for every technology service that contact centers deploy. I haven't met a customer of ours that would deploy anything or would add any functionality without being positive that it will have a positive effect on the customer experience that they're providing. It goes beyond cost, 100%. Cost saving is secondary in motivation, but with a distance. So it's always about customer service. So we will track NPS. We will track average handle time, which is dramatically improved always when you add automation, when you add conversational AI. But mainly when we're looking at physical numbers, few numbers there. Cost saving is a big number, of course, but we would also like to track the success rate and the amount of number of minutes and volume that our AI virtual assistants are actually handling. And this is both complex and simple. The simple part is that actually every minute that you have a bot talking to a person, this is direct ROI because a bot is much cheaper than a person on the phone with a customer. So you know that every minute you're on the phone, the virtual assistant is on the phone, you're actually saving money and you're being effective. But it needs to be a successful conversation, right? So we do track success rate and completion rate for these kind of interaction, and that is key. If the virtual assistant is on the phone or on a chat with a customer and it is successful, again, ROI direct and very easy to understand and relate to. If the conversation is not successful, maybe some time was lost or duplicated there, and then it becomes more challenging. So it is critical that you reach high success rate and high completion rates to consider the ROI in place.
Interesting. I'm glad you said completion rates there because I've spoke to a number of people who kind of bring that contact center metrics into the AI kind of realm and start talking about things like containment rates and things like that. How many people were contained within the IVR system, and containment isn't the same as a resolution. So I'm glad to hear you kind of saying to focus on the actual resolution part. And we're going to get into the future in a minute because that's kind of what we build this as. But the final thing on the now, when it comes to measuring the impact of conversational AI, and you mentioned now that you're using minutes. So how long is the AI on the phone for? Because every minute would otherwise have to be paid for if there was a person handling that call. And this is maybe a segue into the kind of future state. As we kind of keep moving into the future and more conversations are handled by AI, do you think that metric will still be a valid metric? Because ultimately, you're not necessarily paying for the AI for the minutes that it has on. I mean, to the AI, it doesn't really matter if the phone call is 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 seconds, and the more of that you have, do you think that it will still become important to measure the length of time that AI is spending with the user, or do you think that other things will start taking its place as far as the underpinning KPIs are concerned?
I think that's a great question. To me, looking at it from a cost structure of a service provider, minutes and time is a factor because, in a sense, you're processing data, and that is affected by the amount of time you spend on a call, right? So you get more data, and that impacts cost. So it's kind of like easy to price it that way. I can imagine different cost structures coming into play, pricing models coming into play in future. But I think for now that becomes a valid unit to look at. I also we haven't talked about it, but we have talked about it briefly in the past. It all started, and actually over AI in a similar way. We believe in voice. We think voice is is prominent. We think it's here to stay. We believe in voice because it's the most natural way for people to communicate forever, right? And it's kind of like this first skill that you acquire when you're born. Maybe it's the only interface that you never need to learn. Even there are some easy interfaces out there, but this is the most natural for us. So we think voice is here to stay. We think it will grow, and with efficient technologies that will know how to handle it and provide you with a better experience around using your voice, then we think it will even go stronger than it is today.
Interesting. I didn't appreciate that Vonage AI actually is more than the automated agent side of things when you talk about like meeting minutes and transcriptions and all that kind of stuff. So that's good to know. But you mentioned earlier on around when you were creating over AI, you noticed that things were broken, and you were thinking that things can be better and things like that. I'm going to come on to how long it takes a project to support. Sorry, I'm just reading one of the comments. And I'm wondering whether we do this now or whether how long it takes a project for a support hotline to find all possible answers for the system before it can be launched. Okay, we'll come on to that in a second, Necker Wolf, if that's all right. So you notice a problem, and you were saying that the current way of I forget the language specifically that you use. You said something like putting conversational AI or what have you in place was almost like a like for like transition. There was nothing transformative necessarily about it, and you were trying to sort of tackle that. I think was that the words you used?
No, I think when we started over AI, I would talk to people around the concept, and I would have to pitch it, and they would be very much skeptical around bots or specifically voice bots, and would it work? Will people like it? This is not the conversation anymore, right? It's obvious that that this is technology that's going to be incorporated in your contact center. I don't think you'll find one that will say, no, I'm not going to have automation or conversational AI in my contact center. I'll be very surprised. And so I think that's what I'm saying. That I think this is already table stakes, but it's an interesting situation. It is table stakes, but not very much adopted yet. Everybody's kind of like, how do I get started? Or like Necker Wolf, can I start? How long does it take? But stuff like that. A little bit hesitant.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we'll do that question now, then we'll move on to the future. So how long does it take then, Noam, for a project, for a support hotline to find all of the possible answers for the system before it can be launched?
So I don't think the project shouldn't include all the possible answers for it to be launched. It needs to you need to find the pain points of which answers should be tackled by the system, and where would you want a real person to be able to answer the phone. And it's kind of easy to separate the two. You just take all the mundane, boring stuff, repetitive, low value inquiries that you're getting, right? The ones that you don't need any empathy there or intelligence in the sort of like understanding complex scenarios. Just take all of these out of the way, and you let the robot do that, and you let people handle the kind of inquiries that people are good in handling, and the fact, and the ones that actually makes us human, where I can express empathy or where I can understand very subtle nuances that maybe machines sometimes struggle with. But to answer your questions, we've actually built the system in a way that can allows it to start with very low amounts of training data on the get-go, and learn from there. So we are able to have a project up in a matter of weeks. I can share a real-life scenario that we had in COVID. This is an extreme project, but we've been approached by a company that was being hit with massive amounts of inquiries due to COVID. Really, in early days, it was March or April. We got their email on a Friday. Hey, we need help. We need it urgent. They were not a Vonage customer, and we were up live with them on a Monday. So everybody was on it for the weekend, and we were taking live calls, thousands of calls on Monday. This was something that I was very proud of, because to me that was proof that I don't know if it comes out like I'm pitching Vonage here. I'm actually not. I'm just like really excited about all this stuff. But to me, that was proof that we built both the system and the human skills that we have to set this up, and probably we'll get to this in a minute, that we built it right, because I can't name a company other than us that can have a project like that up and running in 3 days and being successful at getting these live calls.
That's quick, Dustin. 3 days.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
Very
That's lightning quick. Okay then. Okay, so let's fast forward then. So you mentioned that this technology is not hugely adopted right now, although the wheels are starting to turn. There is a lot more interest in this space, not just from the voice AI community and from providers like Vonage and players like that, but generally in the contact center, a lot of heads of customer experience, heads of contact center, heads of transformation initiatives, they're starting now to look at this and think, well, there's some real business value here. I think we can really kind of achieve something. So there seems to be like this groundswell of activity going on. And so one of the things I was saying the other day, I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was saying that I think that in whether it's 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is, every company, more or less, the first point of contact, no matter what channel you use, will be some form of AI, some form of assistant. Whether you text them, whether you email them, whether you phone them, whatever it is, the first point of contact will be an AI. And that's the way I kind of see things going. And I just wonder whether you can describe what you think the future of customer service looks like. Let's do that first, and then we'll go into the knock-on effects, and we'll get into what organizations need capability-wise, skill-wise, staffing-wise to be able to, go on that kind of journey. So first of all, what do you think the future of customer service looks like? Is it an AI-first world? Like what do you see if you fast forward 5 years?
Yeah, it is definitely an AI-first world, and this to me is a little bit frustrating, and I'll tell you why. Because if we're talking about 5 or 10 years from now, probably I won't have patience to see it through. So we started something, and when this becomes like such a reality where you can capitalize on it, I'll probably be doing something else. But yes, I think we're sadly looking at maybe that amount of years, but I think it's very much obvious that it is a reality. I'll take a step back a little bit and talk about bots and the trends that we saw. So it all started with chatbots, and everybody were super hyped, and everybody were only talking about chatbots, and then everybody got really frustrated because it didn't work. This first wave was kind of crappy, and the experiences were bad. But then we're now seeing the technology evolve and improve dramatically. We're seeing amazing stuff being done with voice AI and with conversational AI. And and I think also to the realization where this is 100% the future. But when you're looking at what's actually happening in the industry, you're seeing that we're not even scraping the surface. Really, not even there. Not even in the single percent of handling the amounts of volume. And when you look at these, on one, understanding that it's a reality for everybody, and second, that nothing is happening right now, you understand that the in-between is the potential. So I'm 100% positive 1000% positive that each and every contact center out there, small or big, will have AI deployed across its operation. I think we will see in the smaller ones, we will see more of the hybrid AI and human agents working together. And in the larger one, we will see it more separated, where AI will handle most of the volume very effectively, and humans will be there to provide some sort of special expertise, kind of inquiries that also come with the nature of business of the larger enterprises. We will see AI deployed end to end, so both in terms of automation and virtual agents, but also in the underlying technologies of handling these calls, analyzing them, and how all this data is being processed to CRM, and the insights are driven to improve the business. So I think it will be an all-around dramatic shift that is only now starting. It's really in the infantry kind of stage.
What do you think, Dustin? What do you concur with those kind of visions? What's your thoughts on the future of customer service?
Man, I don't like to make predictions because I'm always wrong. But I mean, it sounds reasonable, right? I think one thing that I think when you're mentioning this, right, you're thinking about the smaller ones, right? The smaller ones might have this hybrid, but I think the larger ones might have the hybrid as well, or they will have the hybrid, because there's always going to be things that the AI can't handle. There's always going to be things that you're going to have to hand off. And the goal really is to reduce that number as much as possible, but I don't think you're ever going to get it to zero. The interesting thing for the smaller players are really going to be these one-shot models, these ones where there's not a lot of data that needs to go into it to train, or really no data that needs to go into it to train. Because if you are a candle maker, right, or a baker, or what have you, in a small town, or even a mid-sized city, but you're not a national chain, you're not going to have this data. Or even if you're just starting out with this new support channel, you're not going to have that data either. So really, a lot of this power, in my opinion, is going to be coming from these models that can be stood up without any or with very little data. Kane, what do you think about the future?
I think that's a really sensible way of thinking about it, because the in the example there of, I mean, it's we've kind of seen it. I mean, it's why Apple acquired Voices, or at least my theory around why Apple acquired Voices was because Voices had expert domain knowledge about retail queries. And so, if you imagine kind of in your baker example, a small business that does one thing, let's call it baking. Once somebody has understood the language model required to support that baking use case, then really it's already kind of happened. It's already been trained. It shouldn't require. There might be things like edge cases where the AI can't handle it. It's specific to a specific baker. They've got a specific product or whatever. But broadly speaking, once you've got the understanding of these are the conversations that happen in this environment, you can kind of train the model, and then you can almost have like an out the box solution. Is that what you see, Noam? Do you see that for certain areas, for certain verticals, for certain industries, you're going to be able to, over time, once you've collected the data, there is an opportunity to then start standardizing those language models and conversations? Or do you think everyone's going to need their own version of something?
I would like to, yes. First of all, yes, this is going to be a significant portion of how this will play. But I will suggest another approach, and I'll give you an analogy. I saw this company that I thought was very, very cool. It's called, I think it's called Automata or something like that. They're based in London. And what they do is they build relatively cheap robotic arms that you can train yourself. Today, if you want to deploy robots in your factory, this is a pretty expensive operation. These robots cost 100,000 K or more, and so it's not for the baker, right, or the very small business. But I did see, but this company, they make this robotic arm that you can train yourself, and they sell them for like around $7,000. Which makes it affordable. And I saw how it's being used in a very small stamp maker. So I think it was in Manchester. So it was a 4-people operation, and they had one employee that was taking stamps from one place to the other. That he was doing basically that as part of their manufacturing line, very small. This robotic arm, the way that it works, he just does the same action, but it does it with the robotic arm, right? It takes takes the stamp, puts it back, and it trains it like that a little bit by just doing the repetitive work. Sensors collect what is doing, and over time it learns to do it by itself. And once it's done, basically he can move on to his next task and train potentially another arm like that, another robotic arm. So what happened there? You basically and we can talk about the impact that it has on the business in a second, but this kind of model that lets you basically train over time, you start with 0 data and you just walk hand to hand with this machine and train it over time in a process that is almost seamless, I guess, to your day-to-day business. And then over time, it basically takes over. So think about something like that as a way to deploy automation in these smaller businesses.
So what impact does that have on the business then? Because right now, everyone's kind of fumbling around trying to initiate these automation initiatives. And you're right, you talked about conversational AI on the front end and then also more automation on the back end. And I think that's definitely we're already seeing that happen with platforms that are partnering with RPA platforms and things like that and all that kind of stuff. And I think that what I'm trying to get to is most people, most of the time, don't really think beyond like 12 months or so, or at the very like 3 years maybe is a good horizon to think at. But I think that most people tend to think like we've got a problem right now. Our calls are ringing off the hook, phone's ringing off the hook. We don't have the bodies to deal with it anyway, so we need to do something today. We need to do something now. And then there is a school of thought that is all about kind of like the robots are coming and taking our jobs and all this kind of stuff. And so in that environment there that we've kind of just described, the future of customer service, being conversational AI fronted, the more conversations that AI handles, inevitably the less conversations humans are handling. And so the question is like that seems logical as a first port of call. Like today, we need to automate something today because we've got a real problem. We need to create the capacity to be able to handle things and use the AI to kind of fend off some of that demand so that we can manage things. But as things progress and as things go, and let's say it's 3 years, 5 years, or whatever, the AI starts automating more and more front-end conversations, starts automating more and more back-end conversations. We're kind of almost at that point, potentially, or things move, obviously. And if you take this in isolation, you're missing out on everything else that might happen that impacts things and all that kind of stuff. But if we do take this in isolation and we say that AI starts automating more and more conversations, there'll be a lot of people listening to this thinking, well, what about all those jobs? What about all those people? So now inevitably new skills might be needed, new jobs might be created and whatnot. But what's your answer to that potential problem whereby the AI might be replacing human jobs, and what kind of jobs will need to exist in that future state where if your frontline services are increasingly managed by AI? For those people listening in now who are thinking, we're doing this, we're going through the process, they've got bots live, they've done a degree of automation. What's next when you increase the automation? What happens to the staff, and what skills do you need to maintain it?
Okay, you've asked a lot of questions there, and so I'll try and answer all of them.
I'm glad you were following because I have no idea what I've just said.
I was trying to. First of all, I'm not worried at all. Actually, it's the other way around. Everything is just going to be so much better. So for all of you that's listening and have been worried until now, you can all relax. It's just going to be amazing. And I have tons to say about this. First of all, let's imagine the revolution that came with like automation in factories, right? Factories came in and they brought automation and robots, and we all know this, Charlie Chaplin kind of like movie in modern times, and everybody was scared that their jobs are going to be taken. Think about a factory now and a factory 100 years ago. Which one do you want to be operating, right? Which one do you think where employees are happier? This in today's world or like 100 years ago? Nobody would take their current operation and take it 100 years back regardless of efficiency, for the sake of the people. So I think we're going to see exactly the same effect on people working in the contact center space. Their life is just going to be amazing. And I'll go back to the example that I actually gave a minute ago about like this small business, because I was looking at the guy that was teaching the robotic arm. He was this simple employee, no specific education or anything like that. He was, doing his basic job, and but he was happy. He was challenged with new technology. He could open. He's not the guy that moves stamps from side to side. He's actually a guy that trains robots, which is, I don't know, at least sounds 100 times better, and it actually is, because it's much more interesting. He was sitting on his laptop and like having like doing like drag and drop, using a drag and drop tools to teach the robot to do additional stuff. So his life in this very small stamp business just became so much better. And in a similar way, it's going to be the same in the contact center space. We're seeing agent churn in contact center. One of the highest throughout every industry. It is a very hard job to maintain it, specifically because regardless of the fact that people can be annoying the customers that are calling in, and specifically if you live in a country like mine, but so people are yelling at you, and it's very repetitive all the time, again and again and again, doing the same stuff. It is just not stuff that people are good at doing. We're not good at being robots. We're just bad at it. We suffer from it, and then people leave. So it's very hard. It's not only about churning the contact center, but actually it's very hard to find people to facilitate the jobs that you need to meet scale and stuff like that. So when you bring in what will happen is a little bit the same as what happened with this guy in the stamp shop. You are going to upgrade your employees to be supervisor, to become high-tech employees that actually train robots, work hand-to-hand with them, monitor them. Their job is going to be much more interesting and less repetitive, less boring. You're going to suffer less. They're going to be happier. And everything is just going to be more. So with that, I truly believe that everybody's well-being is going to improve. I'm not worried about unemployment or anything like that at all. This is proven over time and over the past hundreds of years to just not happen. With progress, we new jobs that weren't there before, and we'll see that happening big time in the contact center. People will just have better stuff to do than what they're doing now.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think one of the things that you'll have people like the guy in Manchester who is enthusiastic. Anyone who's ever worked on any transformation kind of initiative, that's what you need to find. Is you need to find those champions, those people who are influential within their department, who are keen, who can kind of get on board and bring it to the rest of the group, kind of thing. But then you've got people like I don't know, little old kind of Kevin or Sally who kind of like just turn up to work because they just turn up to work. If they've got to answer the phone all day, fine. They're just kind of like, maybe close to retirement and whatever, they're not necessarily thinking about careers. They like turning up, they like socializing, they like answering calls and all that kind of stuff. And for those kind of people, I think that one thing is everybody thinks that the future, they base the future on what things are right now. So you mentioned there the factories and stuff like that, and the Industrial Revolution. People think about the future based on where things are and the current situations in the current environment. But technology doesn't just change. Everything else moves with it. Society moves with it. The world changes with it. And so the reality of 5 years, 10 years time, the whole world's going to be in a different place anyway. And so things move, things change, But if we were to use that mental model of things are as they are right now and nothing changes, and fast forward, now the bots have taken over our jobs. One of the things that these teams will need, maybe, this would be good to get your thoughts on, is access to tools to be able to, in that case with the factory, train that bot. In this case, train and maintain conversational AI potentially. And we're kind of talking about one of the things that will enable that. We're doing a lot of stuff at the moment around like maturity, conversational AI maturity, and there's no difference there than digital transformation maturity, which is that it starts out in an embryonic phase, you're researching, then it moves to like innovation, where it's in the innovation team or the R&D team, people are playing around with it. Maybe you launch something, you put something live, you learn the value, and then it kind of scales from that incubation, if you like, or innovation into like almost like a center of excellence or something like that. And then from the center of excellence, that one team can only do so much, and so you need to, with technology, devolve it to the organization, and you move to this like digital factories model where you've got people or small teams within departments that are responsible for whatever the initiative is, in this case conversational AI. And then you move into this kind of like total capability where everybody understands it and does it. It's a little bit like either social media or a little bit like website front self-service. Like it's just part of the business now, and that's what everyone feeds into the website content and all that kind of stuff. And so to get through that phase, and the reason why I was talking about Kevin and Sally is because they're not going to code, they're not going to understand the language, they're not going to understand any of that, and what they really need is tooling, that'll help them get on with their life and get on with their job. And so we've mentioned once already about language models being created on their own using domain knowledge that they've stacked up over the years. We haven't spoke about the advances in NLU, Dustin, and natural language generation as well, which might kind of fuel further sort of automation of those language models and that. And we're starting to see now drag and drop tools and stuff like that, which make access to AI easier. And so I suppose what I'm trying to get around to is the democratization of conversational AI with drag and drop tools, with self-building language models and things like that. I imagine that's what will continue to happen, is that democratization of it, so that anybody can eventually in 10 years time use it. And so two questions. One is, do you agree with that kind of whole maturity and the concept of AI needing to be democratized? And two, what areas do you think right now could be made easier to use for people that don't code?
So I agree 100%. I think that's exactly what's happening and where we should go. And this is how we internally at Vonage, we look at our roadmap for the contact center. So it's not about the contact center today as it is, but we have in mind the people that will be utilizing our software and our tools. What will they need to support in this brave new world, and what are the tools that they will need in order to operate it properly? So we are looking mainly at tools for training and monitoring these kind of activities. We can talk about the talent that you need in a minute, and you're completely right. It starts with drag and drop. This is non-programmers. It all needs to be very intuitive. It all needs to be in line with how we are used to work with the current tools that we have and the kind of interactions and our current knowledge. So we start with drag and drop tools that mimic very nicely the call flows that we usually that we're familiar with and that we're being taught, or that are being sent to representatives when a new script is being deployed. And we are looking at monitoring the automation, the conversational AI activity, and the virtual agents activity. So it can be monitored to improve, to be taught, to be to understand new language, new scenarios. And supervision tools, next generation analytics that will allow you to better understand what's going on as part of these conversations.
Curious to get your thoughts, Dustin, on that kind of democratization of, especially on the NLU side. I know you've done work with GPT-3 and all that kind of stuff. Like, where do you see that kind of thing heading? Do you think that more over time, more and more kind of like, not the transactional stuff, but answers to questions, finding information, do you think that's going to get to a point where that is pretty much able to be totally automated? Or do you think there's always going to need to be people who are there to keep on top of it, keep populating it with new content, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we mentioned, I mentioned this before, that I don't think it's ever going to get completely automated. There's always going to be things that a computer can't understand, or at least within the foreseeable future. The goal here is, at least from the business perspective, to reduce that number of the number of times that someone has to speak with someone. you look at you speak with customer support teams out there, and they're some of the most metric driven people out there, right? Because they are measured on how much they are costing the company. And so they'll tell you, it costs $5 to $10. Sometimes you talk to people who it costs hundreds of dollars every time they actually have to speak with someone. And so if you can reduce that by just 1%, 2%, up to 5 or 10%, that's a huge cost savings for the company. And so I definitely feel like, while I disagree with Noam that it's maybe a good thing that AI is potentially taking over everything or taking over 90%, I do think at least there is a business interest there for the computers, the AI to take over the easy stuff, and to have the experts, to have the humans step in when things are actually complex and actually fulfilling.
I think it's Andrew. The name is Active Chat. I'm assuming it's Andrew from Active Chat. I didn't see that question. I genuinely asked Dustin that question, but Andrew's asking a very similar question, so we'll throw it to you, Noam. Do you see any future for tools like GPT-3 in customer service?
I think GPT is very exciting. Definitely, I can see the future of future tools being developed with similar models. I'm not sure exactly about if it will be GPT-3 because it has its own limitations and kind of like limited. It's funny to say limited because the amounts of data behind it are so immense, but it is limited to that kind of data, which makes it less feasible for very specific industries and verticals. But the models behind it and the idea that it can shorten significantly the amount of time that you need to invest and training that you need to invest in virtual agents, that I think is exactly where things should go and where it will go in the next generation of virtual agents.
I think that actually brings up a good question. I'd be interested in getting your thoughts, Noam. I can guess your perspective, at least as a service provider, but GPT-3 cost, I think it was $12 million to train. These models that we're seeing that are state of the art now from Google, from Microsoft, from Amazon, they're coming from them because they're really the only ones that have that amount of money. So do you see the system where even a Fortune 500 company, but that's maybe in the like 400 to 500 size, are they going to have the resources to create these models, to run this AI themselves, or are they going to have to go to service providers, whether it's AWS, Azure, or Vonage? How is that going to go? Is AI getting so complex that it's getting priced out for everyone but the FANG?
The thing that in the space that we are relating to right now, we saw a lot of models that are actually low data models that are outperforming the models that are data heavy. So it's not about how much data you have necessarily. You need to focus on the kind of problem that you're looking to solve. And sometimes different models are actually achieving better results. And we are seeing that in most of our systems, again, for these specific interactions that we're looking to accommodate, we have models in place that rely on low data and are performing amazingly well. So I don't think you need to be super rich in order to develop your own model, and it's not always in huge amounts of data.
Are those transfer learning models, or are those models trained from the base?
Both. We use hybrid. Sorry for that. We use hybrid models. It really depends on the kind of solution that we're building.
Cool. Got a couple of more questions coming through. One from Jessica Brady. Currently, many customers complain about AI in customer service. How do we optimize the bots to alleviate that frustration versus when you talk to a human?
So it really tricky question here. No, so it really depends on the solution, right? And I was referring to that a little bit before. I think the previous generation of solutions that were out and chatbots were just not very good. I think what's maybe missing in the process. And I'm sure that you will relate with this, Kane. I think is the expertise of what you're building, what are you deploying, and where. We have a team of conversation designers that are doing just that. They will sit with the customer, understand what kind of inquiries are coming in, what's the nature of conversations, what you do tackle and what not, where can you deliver the right results and where not, or where does it need more time in order to be trained. And I think this is where the kind of like the secret sauce is. There is still human touch in the process, and you need the expertise in order to know what you're doing and deliver a successful project. And this kind of metric is definitely something that you need to track, right? If people are complaining, you're doing something wrong.
What do you think, Dustin? Any other things that we can do to optimize for customer frustration? Are customers that frustrated? That what and if they are, what can you do to optimize for that?
I've been frustrated in the past, that's for sure. What about you, Ken?
I have. I can give you an example. I'm going to do a video about this. My bank, right, Metro Bank. I'm going to call you out. I tried to call them last Friday, and I literally have I put the video up yet? I can't remember if I put the video up yet or not. Anyway, I called them last Friday, and I can show you the thing. I don't know if you can see that. It's probably a bit blurred. Basically, I had to call them 3 different times. There, max it so people can see. I had to call them 3 different times. And what happened? All I was trying to do, I was locked out of my bank. That's all it was. They just kept freezing me, and so I had to call, press 1 for this, press 2 for that. Oh no, call. I think there was. I called it. I had to press what? Yeah, that's it. It wasn't actually conversational AI. It was me having to press 1 and press 2, and I ended up getting put on hold for however long I was put on hold for. Finally got through to someone. The conversation was like a 2-minute conversation. It was done. So I've been frustrated on that front. I can't actually think of a conversation I've had recently with an automated agent. I can't actually think of a conversation I've had with. I'll end there. I can't actually think of a conversation I've had recently with an automated agent, so I don't know. But yeah,
were you ever happy with such conversation? Did you ever experience like a true amazing conversation that you had with a virtual agent?
I've had a good one with Amazon. Amazon, usually when I've contacted them, it's been a person, but I've had one automated one where it was able to solve my problems altogether. It's interesting. I sort of think about automated customer support, AI-driven customer support, sort of in this will maybe be a controversial metaphor, sort of like drone strikes. A lot of people are against drone strikes because if you're going to go into war, you're going to kill people. You need to have some skin in the game, and you can't just be sitting safely off. And so I think customer support is the same way. If you're going to have bad customer support, you should at the very least have some skin in the game. Otherwise, it's this asymmetrical situation where you're putting your customers in this terrible situation, but you're not willing to put your employees, you're not willing to put your team in there as well. So I definitely can feel what Jessica is mentioning here, that bad customer support is bad. Bad customer support where it's just AI driven is even worse, because you can't reason with it, and that you're wasting your time and no one else is wasting their time.
But you just need to have the right fallbacks in place, and you need to have the system understand frustration, see that something is going wrong, be very sensitive to the situation, and fall back to a human in that case. And this is, by the way, how we usually kickstart when we first go live. We have all these we have the mechanism in place to understand that the conversation is going wrong and not iterate it again and again, but fall back, learn from what happened, improve over time, but just being very sensitive as you onboard and as you go, as you onboard more and more traffic, also be aware of that kind of like sensitivity.
I wonder whether there is that much kind of frustration. There is frustration. I can see that. But what the point I was getting onto with the Metro Bank is that I would have preferred that to be a conversation with a bot, because it's relatively straightforward. It would have took me far quicker. And so I wonder whether if you call someone or you send them a Facebook message or WhatsApp or whatever it might be, if you get an agent or an AI behind it, I don't know whether or not there'll be kind of I think you just get on with it. And if it doesn't work, yes, it's frustrating. But I don't know whether it's like, yeah, I think once you call someone, if you speak to an agent, you just kind of get on with it, you know? Obviously, it needs to be designed well, it needs to actually work. And I think part of that is not trying to bite off more than you can chew with doing something that's too complex, starting with a crawl first with something that's more straightforward. But yeah, so yeah, we've got other questions. We're at time now. There's still 14 people tuning in. I don't know whether you've got another couple of minutes to answer the last two questions, Noam.
Sure, I see one by Dominic.
Yeah, we've got one by Dominic. We've got one by Julia, which we might look to first. Julia put that there a while back. How are you doing for time, Dustin? Have you got 2 minutes to finish off these last couple of comments?
I think I've got 2 minutes.
Cool. Okay, so let's do these relatively quickly. So Julia Anderson, how do you think AI will improve customer experience or worker productivity for telehealth, specifically call centers?
Easy one for me. If understanding the nature of the interactions that you have around telehealth, actually a lot of logistics that are involved around scheduling and managing the different processes that you have behind it. And this is something that that AI does very effectively. AI handle these kind of interactions. Additionally, there's sensitivity around data protection around telehealth. So you need to make sure that you meet the standard provider that meets these standards. But we are all aware that there's extra importance for logging these kind of interactions, being able to track them, being able to understand what happened. If you're being recommended some sort of treatment or medicine, being able to follow up on that. And this is something that advanced analytics today can provide relatively easy.
Cool. Andrew said time lag seems to be one of the most frustrating parts with the conversational AI. We've got one last question from Dominic. Why should venture capitalists have a closer look at conversational AI and voice tech? And how would you define the market potential? A little bit left field. It's a good one to end on that.
Sure. I think we tapped this question a little bit. The market for contact center is huge. It's I think you have, if you're looking at the number of employees, I think it's around $150 billion in salaries paid only in the US to contact center employees. I think around 4 million people are entering calls in contact centers in the US, and this is not the biggest market, right? The market is so much bigger when you're looking also at outsource, etc. Right now, conversational AI, like I said, is barely even scraping the surface. We're looking at a friction of the volume being handled by bots today versus incredible amounts of volumes over text and more importantly voice. So the market is huge. The numbers are staggering, and right now it's really what conversational AI is doing is only, like I said, a friction of the actual potential. So I think there are going to be amazing winners in the space. Room for a lot of companies to be very successful, either being vertical or going broad. But I would definitely invest. Well, I kind of did, right? I invest my money in the space.
Nice. Well, Noam, this has been absolutely fantastic. It's gone in directions I didn't think it would go, which I think it's been wicked. And thank everyone for the conversations and for the questions. It's been absolutely immense. Where can people find out a little bit more about Vonage AI and the kind of work that you do? And if they're interested in having a closer look, what's the best way for them to go and do that?
Either go to vonage.com or simply email me directly, noam.fine@vonage.com. Feel free, any question that we might have missed, or if you want to follow up in any way, or just think how we should start, just shoot me an email.
Cool, fantastic. Any closing thoughts, Dustin?
No, just thank you so much, Noam, and thank you to everyone, like you mentioned, who is active in the chat as well.
Cool. Well, next week is, bear with me, Justin Randall.
It's going to be a good one.
It's going to be a very good one. We're going to be talking about deploying. I need to work out the company actually. Let me just do this before.
It's going to be good, but not.
It's gonna be what?
It's going to be good, a good one, but not as good as this one. This one.
Yeah, this has been the best one we've had for a while. I'm
Gold
not,
standard up here.
yeah, I'm not just saying that. It has actually been really, really good. Comwave, apologies, Justin. Justin Randall of Comwave is going to be talking to us about deploying Dialogflow into a contact center for the very first time. So this is going to be an interesting one for anyone who's just doing this for the first time and who's looking at Dialogflow. So do check it out. Once again, Noam, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Immensely interesting. Really appreciate you spending some time with us. I know it's late over there, so thank you even more for hanging around later into the evening. And yeah, as Justin said, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you